Ho ho ho! Merry Christmas! Happy holidays and happy Dragon December! I hope no matter what holiday you are celebrating, whether it's Christmas like me or any of the others, or even if you don't celebrate any kind of holiday today or any day throughout this whole month, I hope you're having a fantastic day or a fantastic celebration. Hopefully this video will just be another sprinkling of snow from the North Pole to grant you more merriment and cheer, whether you are tucking in to a massive dinner right now or reclining on a sofa like a red dragon, basking in your own gluttony. I hope that this video just helps. This has been a fantastic celebration. I've really enjoyed it. This is the final video in this year's Dragon December. Hopefully a good way to end an otherwise absolutely horrendous year. You've done fantastically well to make it all the way through, and I'm sorry that it's been so unbelievably hard for so many. I hope that it's not had too much of a massive impact on you personally, and I hope that you've had lots and lots of D&D games over Roll20 or just massively socially distanced. But this is my favourite time of the year, and I'm really glad I get to share that with you. Thank you so much for making another year of the Arcane Forge an absolute fantastic time. I've really enjoyed myself, not just with Dragon December, but in general, getting to talk to all of you guys in the comments section, those of you who have supported me on Patreon. We've had one-on-one chats during isolation and all this kind of stuff, or even if you've been silent this whole time but you've just been watching my videos and supporting me anyway, I really appreciate it. So thank you so much, and this gift is for you. I'm going to be taking a nice long holiday after this. I will see you either towards the end of January or in February, because I really like, well, I love Christmas and I want to enjoy the rest of my month celebrating and being gluttonous and doing whatever I want, basically. Being with my family, we've just moved home, so getting to spend a lot of time with them. But in the meantime, we have the most requested video, I think probably of all time, which saw a massive spike, a massive incline in suggestions in last year's Dragon December. Hopefully we can try and beat that even with something for next year, who knows? Time to start thinking of dragons for next year's Dragon December. If you think of any, make sure to leave them down in the comment section below, because I really like to use your suggestions for which monsters, which dragons I should draw and talk about the lore and mythology of in these videos. But today's topic of Bahamut, or Bahamut, however you like to pronounce it, the god of good aligned metallic dragons, was first suggested 2 whole years ago by Erodin. I think it makes a fantastic counterpart to the final video of last year where I talked about Tiamat, the god queen of evil dragons. So let's get started with today's video and talk about Bahamut, and I hope you have a happy holiday from wherever you're watching. Bahamut, also known as the Platinum Dragon, King of the Good Dragons, Lord of the North Wind, and the Worm King, alongside many other titles that have been given to this enormous celestial dragon since their debut appearance in 1975's Greyhawk supplement for 1st edition, is the god dragon of metallic dragons, of law and order, compassion and justice. That said, when Bahamut was first created, they were simply referred to as, quote, the Dragon King, also called the Platinum Dragon, and they didn't have a particular given or individual name. Their litany of regal-sounding titles only attached themselves to this character in later supplements and editions. But more specifically, as gods tend to need to be the god of something, Bahamut is said to represent good dragons, wisdom, and justice. They also represent, and to some extent personify, the elements of air, of cold, dragonkind, goodness, law, luck, nobility, safety and protection, the unbridled power of the storm, hope, justice, life, and to some extent, war as well. The actual origins of Bahamut in the D&D multiverse are, as one would expect, of stories taking place over multiple realities, fractured timelines, and being passed on down through verbal storytelling or written in perishable tomes and texts, really hard to nail down concretely. The most common versions of their origins fall roughly into 2 different camps, with one claiming that Bahamut is the child of Asgarath, the progenitor of the dragon gods, and by extension, they would be the sibling of Tiamat, the devil goddess of evil and chromatic dragons, who I was lucky enough to cover last year at the end of Dragon December. But also Null, the dragon deity of undeath and regular death, fate, knowledge, and to some extent, law. Null is another fascinating dragon god who I'm sure I'll get to cover in one Dragon December or another down the road, but their story is too long to go into just now while I'm trying to focus on Bahamut. But while this Asgarath tale is a likely candidate for their origins, there are just as many accounts that indicate that Bahamut and Tiamat were once two sides of the same dragon god at the dawn of time, who were once called Io. Io was responsible for creating all kinds of dragons, the metallic when they felt most inclined towards benevolence, and the chromatic when they felt most vengeful, greedy, or wrathful. In tellings of this story, Io was unceremoniously bisected by a primordial titan's axe during an epic, world-shattering duel, and the two halves of Io that remained healed and separated into Bahamut and Tiamat respectively. The blood that was shed on the earth eventually congealed into the dragonborn people, somewhat mimicking stories of the origins of elvenkind canonically. Ultimately, whether you should choose to include this god in your world or not, and by extension their origins and relationship with Tiamat, are utterly up to you as the creators of your own stories. So any combination of elements from these stories, or even something completely your own, could be the genesis of this particular dragon god. Let me know down in the comments if you include Bahamut in your campaigns, and if so, how did they come into existence? Is that even well known in your world, or is it a mystery that mortals cannot fathom, and does it have an impact on how they behave and the lore of your universe? Anyway, as mentioned in my Metallic Dragons video, the good aligned dragons of D&D are said to be obsessed with the lives of mortal species, none more so than Bahamut, who spends a great deal of their time shapeshifted into the form of a mortal hermit to experience and revel in the lives of simpler, more innocent, or perhaps just more fascinating creatures. We're told that roughly a quarter of this creature's life is spent wandering the world in the shape of a human, usually in the form of a frail old hermit. This is particularly significant because this is something that Zeus also used to do. I say used to do as if Zeus is real. In stories, in ancient Greek myths, Zeus also used to do this very same thing, appearing as an old hermit and arriving on people's doorsteps. In ancient Greek culture, hospitality was incredibly important. One of the reasons for this is that supposedly Zeus, among being the king or ruler or leader of the gods, wielder of weaponized lightning, and father of almost all demigods that you can mention, one of his chief responsibilities was for upholding hospitality. In ancient Greek culture, if someone were to arrive on your doorstep, it would be expected that you would take them in, feed them, and offer them a place to rest. This was just a cultural norm, potentially out of fear of what Zeus would do to you if you didn't, but it was a good practice that featured in many ancient myths, including Homer's Odyssey. Zeus used to test people's willingness to perform this selfless act by transforming himself into a hermit and subsequently judging people based on whether or not they were invited in and treated kindly or not. It seems that this concept has been borrowed from Zeus and transplanted into Bahamut in our D&D campaigns. But we're also told that Bahamut was said to, while looking like an old hermit, be surrounded or orbited by 7 sweetly singing golden canaries at all times. These golden canaries are, just like Bahamut himself, are an illusory form, and are secretly 7 great golden worms that guard and protect and also revere Bahamut, known as the Exarchs of Bahamut, the disciples of this dragon god, who included Borkad the Claw, Bahamut's right hand of justice, an angel-like golden dragon who enforces law at all costs, Curva the Eye, a suspicious ancient golden dragon who is the spy of Bahamut, who undertook tasks of secrecy, Songrad the Wing, the messenger of Bahamut, Gruamar the Voice, the negotiator who prefers peaceful words over bloodshed, Marashok the Tail, the largest of the ancient golden dragons, who is the personal bodyguard of Bahamut, and despite their friendly and jovial demeanour, was known to be the most fearsome warrior of all the ancient golden dragons. Tronaxia the Presence was said to be the most beautiful and radiant of the golden dragons, who used their intimidating and beguiling presence, who is sent to inspire awe and fear, and Yogala the Fang, who is the leader and primary tactician of all of Bahamut's many legions, followers, and armies. When transformed into the appearance of a wandering hermit, these great and ancient dragons surrounded Bahamut as golden canaries, making sure that they would get to bask in Bahamut's brilliance, but also so that they could at almost all times be protecting and guarding this deity, making them, for all intents and purposes, invincible by conventional means. While I've mentioned multiple times throughout this video that Bahamut is the god of good dragons, they are revered by all good dragons, but in particular gold, silver and brass dragons revere him most prominently. And while evil dragons do not worship this creature, they recognize in him his immense power and wisdom. Bahamut only accepts good aligned priests, but doesn't really care if they are dragons, half-dragons, or other beings which are non-reptilian in any capacity. They strive to constantly, yet subtly, act on behalf of good, and will welcome with open arms anyone who opposes evil. But the true spirit of Bahamut, and those who follow his teachings and example most clearly, know that it is not enough to be good, but also to ensure that they do no harm whatsoever. This propensity to lean towards and respect pacifism as an icon indicative or essential to the nature of goodness may be why we don't have stats for Bahamut in 5e conventionally, and why they are guarded at all times by these exarchs. It may simply be that a conflict with Bahamut would instead be a conflict with their golden dragon bodyguards, and that Bahamut themselves would not engage or retaliate violently. While Bahamut seems to be largely worshipped by clerics and paladins, who may act violently to defend the virtues and uphold honest and benevolent practices, it may be in the monk that we find those who most clearly resemble the core values of Bahamut. Faith in Bahamut and the rituals associated with their will seem to far more closely align themselves with Buddhist or some other kind of pacifist, meditative and monastic practice. We're told, for example, that one of the chief rituals that a worshipper of Bahamut may undertake is known as the ritual of rebirth, which is described as follows. Quote, "Those who commit to this demanding ritual put aside all their weapons and equipment, dressing in simple linen shift. They meditate for a full day and night, their head filled with reminders of all they are giving up. If they elect to go on, then they enter an egg-shaped chamber at dawn and sleep until dawn the next day, emerging as a dragonborn, a noble, draconic, platinum-scaled version of their previous shape, ready to become a permanent champion against Tiamat and her spawn," end quote. Which, aside from the physical transformation into a literal half-dragon creature, sounds a lot like the meditative attempts of monks to unburden themselves from the shackles of the world and to embrace enlightenment. The symbol of Bahamut is the icon of this god, which is flown on the flags worn on the tabards and sculpted into the icons of reverence and divine spellcasting of those who worship them. And it is that of a dragon head turned to the side, established in pure white on a field of royal blue. Temples to the platinum dragon are extremely rare, but we are told that those that do exist are beautiful and elegant, but not over the top. They are clean, with simple architecture and furnishings, with no lavish wealth strewn across them, none that could be given to others in a show of goodness. We're told that within the rooms of this temple would be multiple chambers dedicated to the public, in which the faithful of any kind can gather, with multiple private rooms dedicated for individual recuperation and meditation. We're told that dragons do not normally build temples, instead usually gathering symbols on the walls of their homes that they would treat like shrines. And this is because Bahamut apparently prefers his followers to worship him with deeds and not with objects. The mindless acquisition of wealth is something that Bahamut would be very much against. Despite their D&D origins, it's important to note that again, just like Tiamat, Bahamut, at least in name, was inspired by real-world mythology. Bahamut, whose name is taken from the ancient Hebrew word behemoth, belongs to an enormous sea monster, a huge fish of the deep, or an aquatic dragon according to the writings of Abu Yahya Zachariah in Muhammad al-Khazini, a Persian physician, astronomer, geographer and scribe, writing sometime in the early 1200s CE. Usage of the name Bahamut is believed to derive from a nickname originally being pronounced Balhut, which appears in numerous cosmogonies and different religions, and the nickname of Balhut apparently was given to a creature known as Latia. In Zachariah Quasini's cosmological illustration of reality, Bahamut, rather than being some sort of Cthulhu-esque nightmare creature of the deepest parts of the oceans, as I for one was kind of expecting, is actually a part of a support structure that holds up the Earth, which to my surprise far more resembles Terry Pratchett's Discworld. In these early imaginings, the Earth is shouldered by a great angel who stands on a massive gemstone, which is in turn supported by a cosmic ox known as Kuyutha, also known in Hebrew as Leviathan. It's then that a fusion of a fish and a whale known as Bahamut carries this ox on its back, which carves a path through the water like a great boat and floats all of these things on its back due to its natural buoyancy. Now, I definitely didn't want to stack numerous animals on top of Bahamut here to show some sort of original reference, and Bahamut's appearance in D&D has changed from edition to edition, with their first appearance being accompanied by an illustration that would not dramatically distinguish them from other dragons aside from a horse-like mohawk that ran down their spine and a forked tongue reminiscent of one belonging to some kind of snake. In edition 3.5 of D&D though, two supplements, one named Complete Divine, written by David Noonan and released in 2004, and another called Races of the Dragon, released 2 years later, attempted to shed more light on the gods and dragons of earlier editions. In these books, Bahamut's appearance was described as, quote, a massive, long and sinuous dragon with silver-white scales and blue, cat-like eyes, end quote, although they are also said to shift colour and their scales alter, quote, depend on Bahamut's mood, ranging from sky blue to frosty indigo. So there's a great deal of vagueness here. I decided to fuse a few of these ideas into my interpretation today. I really liked the idea of using a fish-whale type body frame. This is actually, I think, like the third version of Bahamut that I tried to draw. I had a lot of difficulty trying to get this just right, initially with a whale's head and a long thin neck, moving to something more traditionally draconic, and then finally the version that you're seeing today, where the whale inspiration is most prominent. I feel most comfortable with this one because not only does it pay homage to Bahamut's origins in real-world mythology, but also something about a massive seafaring whale-like creature also seems to do justice to Bahamut's passive and kind spirit, the many bristle-like, brush-like teeth that a whale has instead of sharp, flesh-tearing teeth only hammer home the idea that this creature is a pacifist. I decided to give my massive whale god multiple sets of wings, and that all of these wings should be feathered. I quite like this idea for my metallic dragons as seen in my silver dragon video, to denote that they are good aligned and in some capacity obviously angelically inspired. I decided to adorn this metallic whale god in multiple pieces of armor, just to issue that this thing is resplendent and beautiful and terribly powerful despite its pacifism. And yeah, I'm pleased with how this turned out, even if it's not a conventional representation of Bahamut. I think the idea of something gentle, something honest, something pure, something very contrary to my illustration of Tiamat really came through here. The scale colour was something really difficult to deal with because platinum is a material that looks very much like silver. I didn't want it to look just like another silver dragon, so I decided to work with the sky blue and frosty indigo kind of colour palette in the end, and I think that gave me something that looked metallic and reflective, but also could be silvery in a more white light. Which raises the question, sort of, what does it mean to be a platinum dragon? Well, platinum is an extremely rare and by extension valuable pure metal by comparison with other similar valuable ores like gold or silver, although platinum is often mistaken for being silver when it's found because it's near identical in appearance. Platinum exists in higher abundances on the moon and in meteorites than it does on Earth, usually showing up in meteor impact sites, which certainly gives an otherworldly feel, and something worthy perhaps in the ancient world of reverence and attribution to Bahamut. So I hope to make this creature slightly otherworldly looking. In last year's Dragon December, I examined Tiamat's 5e stat block, and concluded that for the 20 levels or so that Wizards of the Coast have canonically provided for playing 5th edition, Tiamat for me seemed like one of the most barbarically difficult monsters that players could physically fight, so I was curious if the same was true of Bahamut, her equal and benevolent counterpart. While no stats canonically exist, most people seeking to provide a tangible combat encounter with Bahamut either homebrew their own stats, using Tiamat as a rough guide or a template, or may find something similar applicable online. David Floor has provided one such homebrew stat block, which seems to be the most popular version of Bahamut on the DM's Guild, which I'll make sure to link in my description box for those who want to feature this creature in one of their campaigns as some sort of obstacle to overcome. Personally though, as I say, were I to feature Bahamut as a physical entity in my campaign, and if I had players who wanted to fight this creature, I would instead have an encounter where they have to deal with 7 ancient and particularly deadly golden dragons all at once. And that would be my combat encounter with Bahamut. Bahamut itself is simply a pacifist, would not retaliate, but its 7 exarchs would do the fighting on its behalf. If you've used Bahamut in a physical combat encounter, make sure to let me know how on earth that turned out, because I would love to hear about the destructive potential that this creature may potentially have, and what it may have done to your players. But anyway, I think I'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this whole year, for this absolute disaster of a year. 2020 has been horrifically tough, and I hope that your Christmas day, if you celebrate Christmas, is proving to be slightly better than the rest of the year. I hope in any small part, if this video contributed to your happiness, well, that would be a great gift. In the meantime though, I'm going to go and enjoy my Christmas dinner, so I hope you'll leave a little like down below, perhaps favourite this video, and share it with the rest of your party who want to learn about D&D, who want to learn about Bahamut in particular. As for me, this is the last video you're going to see from me for a little while. I'm going to start making videos again in January, but I'm going to have a little break and relax throughout the rest of this festive season, which I absolutely adore. I'll make sure to keep you updated on my Instagram and also on the community page here, so keep an eye out for that. I intend to have another video ready before the end of January, but I'm going to relax, so I'm not going to do any promising on that. At the very latest, it'll be February. But like I say, I'm going to aim for January. Anyway, I'm rambling, and we all have mince pies, mulled wine, and leftovers to be getting to. From me here at the Arcane Forge, I hope you have a fantastic Merry Christmas, a happy holiday, or just a good day if you don't celebrate any of those things, and happy monster hunting.